We're so happy to welcome Kendall Gammon to After Further Review with Mark and John. Kendall, former NFL player, also was part of the Chiefs radio network as well last year, so saw up close and personal everything going on there, and has a lot of things going on post-NFL career. We'll get to that in a bit. Alumni of Pittsburgh State in Kansas, where he's a Hall of Famer. He was the first long snapper ever selected to the Pro Bowl. And oh, by the way, after that, every year a long snapper is selected to the Pro Bowl. So Kendall Gammon is a pioneer among all the other accolades we can throw your way. Kendall, thanks for joining us very much. How are you holding up in this crazy time?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the kind words. Only in America can you throw a ball between your legs and get paid for it. So it is a beautiful country.
Yes.
I'm holding up. I'm doing a lot of this, which is the Zoom meetings and doing different things of this nature and just kind of dealing with it the best you can. I speak a lot, a whole bunch, and I talk heavily and focus heavily on mental health. And certainly with the pandemic and what's going on, that's a hot topic these days.
I wanted to ask you, Ken, first of all, I do want to say I certainly hope you get a cut from every single long snapper that makes the Pro Bowl, because I know they get some sort of bump in their contract if they're a Pro Bowl. They should send that to you.
It's the Gammon clause, yes.
Yes, good for you, my friend. Well done. I do want to ask, we're going to talk about last night's game, but I do want to ask you about last year because there was a great point made during the broadcast. I think all of us, when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, assumed that it was sort of this fait accompli with this amazing quarterback who could play off script as well as anyone, and they all that offensive talent. But it was pointed out in the broadcast last night that it didn't start out that way for the Chiefs last year. The defense was a problem. Patrick Mahomes did not play every single snap like the Patrick Mahomes that we saw in the second half, certainly the Super Bowl. When did you believe last year that this was a team that could make its mark deep into the playoffs and perhaps win a championship?
What I think it's when they responded after that really debilitating loss at Nashville against the Titans, because the Chiefs had that game all but won, and they literally gave away the last 3 minutes. And having played 15 years and been on the Chiefs radio network for 12, I still say that plane ride home was the quietest ride I've ever seen. Because generally, as human beings, we get over things, but everybody to a man knew that they had let that one go. So coming out the next week and how they played, and then of course got on that roll and haven't lost since, actually, I think that's when I started believing. And it's a pretty interesting group as well, because you look at last year, oftentimes when you talk about teams and their ability to win the Super Bowl, you always say, well, they just got to stay free from injury. That's always a big deal. And it is. Yet the Chiefs dealt with it in terms of actually letting their QB go down for several games. They got down to their third string defensive end because they had the top two go down. I mean, it was just right, left. And the one thing that Big Red, Andy Reid, says all the time is, next man up, and he means it, and they coach him that way. And they just showed some resilience last year that I thought was very amazing and something I hadn't seen in quite a while.
Well, speaking of Andy Reid, there's a resilience there that all of us saw that we hadn't seen in a while. He has, fair or not, been tagged a little bit prior to last year, clearly, of someone who is a brilliant play caller, coaches up great regular season teams, and then somewhere in the playoffs gets a little tight, quote unquote, and loses games maybe they shouldn't lose. So with that in mind, yeah, you respond. I think you win 4 in a row after that Tennessee game to go 12-4, but out of the gate you're down 24-0, and you have been there. You've seen the whole entire Andy Reid era at Kansas City. In the booth at the time, there had to have been some thoughts about, oh, here we go again. And sure enough, before the end of the half, the Chiefs are up 28-24. So that resilience you're talking about was exemplified by Mahomes and the team, but also by Andy Reid. Was that surprising to you guys?
It actually was not. I was on the air in the booth, and I actually said, you know what, if they can score like that many points that quickly, then we can too. And lo and behold, it became the truth. And I think the one thing about Andy Reid is I think you're starting to see a dynasty possibly established here. And certainly they've done a nice job signing their star players, getting Brett Veach, the GM, and the head coach, Andy Reid, signed to 6-year contracts. And some of the things you say, I think, are valid. But at the end of his career, he's going to have 2 or 3 more of these, I think, and then it's going to be forgotten. And I think in general, the good coaches who you don't say those things about, they have franchise QBs. And I don't believe that in Philadelphia, no disrespect for those guys, but I just don't think they were the true franchise QBs like you see on other teams, and certainly not like what Belichick had there with New England. So that's the way I look at it. But having been around Andy Reid since he came to Kansas City, the guy's special. I mean, I've played for some good coaches. I played for Bill Cowher there with Pittsburgh. I played for Ditka. I played for Herm Edwards. I played for Jim Moore. I played for who else? Dick Vermeil. And you know what? Those are all great coaches. But I wish I could have played for Andy, because I think he's something different and something special. And that's why I think you see what's going on right here in Kansas City happening.
One more question about last year. I mean, it was so consistent that the team would get behind, particularly you looked at those playoff games, and ridiculous. And John Madden famously said of Kenny Stabler, when things were going well, Snake just seemed like he wasn't really that into it. He had to have that pressure. What can you say about that team? First of all, a 2-part question, Kendall. Why did they always get behind like that? And how did they flip the switch? Because it really was, and I went back and I watched, they replayed some of those playoff games in the Super Bowl. It really was remarkable for any team to have done that once, let alone numerous times.
Yeah, on the Super Bowl ring, of which one I got as well here just recently, as I front a little bit with the bling, they've got the scores of all 3 playoff games on the inside of the ring, and then in parentheses how much they were down. So they certainly take great pride in that. I think as a team, having played 15 years in the NFL and then having broadcast it, I don't think a team really flips the switch. I think it's more so the coaching they have and the leadership they have, both from the coaching, as I said, but also the players. And when you look at Patrick Mahomes and how he was wired up and what he was saying, I mean, he never lost belief, and that propagated itself over to the other players, and it was just a special thing. I mean, they knew they had the talent. As far as getting down, there were some unfortunate things that happened that they got down by so much, and you have to give the other teams credit, no doubt, but they just believed all along that they had plenty of time to come back, and they did. And kudos to that whole team and the leadership and how everybody else responded. I mean, it was fun to watch.
No doubt about it. Speaking of fun to watch, last night's game, they're down again, and then 31 unanswered points. To your point, Kendall, they lock up Kelsey, they lock up Jones, they lock up Mahomes, they get, Edwards-Helaire, Damian Williams, unfortunately, may be the Wally Pipp of the NFL at this point in time by opting out. Not to make light of why he opted out, but I think what we see, to your point last year, there was some stuff they left on the table. Their defense didn't figure it out till late. Mahomes had some bumpy starts. He was out for a while. Mm-hmm. They were not necessarily as together as they could have been. They're a team, in other words, that maybe played 7 or 8 out of 10 last year.
Right.
They have room to get better. And to your point, they've locked themselves up for the future really nicely. $600 million such in the offseason. You talked about a dynasty. What did you see last night that sort of solidifies that idea about a dynastic time in Kansas City?
2 words: run game. I mean, you know what else is going on there with the players. You saw Sammy Watkins. He came back for less money. You're going to see the Mahomes effect. It's happening already, which is, do I want to go get paid a little bit more somewhere else, or do I want to stay here and put more of these on? And the answer is you want to put the ring on. That's what the players play for. They would play for free. They don't, but they would. I think last night what Helaire exhibited what was amazing. Back to your original question or thought about the defense, they're coming into their own a little bit right now. They've got the the Keys sign and Chris Jones, of course, the Shark and Frank Clark, and Tyrann Mathieu again had a great game last night. But I think you have to remember that last year was a new defensive coordinator in Steve Spagnuolo. And I thought actually I was wrong. I thought he would get going quicker than he did last year, but he was really still trying to get to know his defense and what they could do even into the season. So I think he's just slowly progressing, and you're seeing these guys understand more and more. And I'll tell you right now, Tyrann Mathieu, first of all, what he does, the Honey Badger on the field is phenomenal, but it's nothing compared to what type of person he is off the field. You know, I visited a hospital, the Children's Cancer Ward at the University of Kansas Medical Center last off season with him and a few others. And the guy's special. He just cares about people. And that's a pretty cool thing because, you know, I do a lot of the things that I do is speaking. And my whole mantra is give your game ball, which your game ball is basically making a positive difference in the life of someone else for no other reason than it's the right thing to do. And that's what Tyrann Mathieu does. And really, that's what the Chiefs organization does. I know I took a little U-turn there, but you have to remember when things are done the right way at the top, it filters down. And it's not just football. It's about more than football, which I think is something to be said, and it's pretty impressive.
To that point with the Honey Badger, I saw him at the post-game press conference, and it was interesting. You hear about coaches who seem more angry with their team when they win than when they lose and all those stories. And he was really focused on the fact that he felt the defense at the end of that game kind of took their foot off the pedal a little bit. And I thought, boy, watching that, I thought the young guys on this team are getting the message that it's not just winning, it's how we play and who we are. I want to ask you, you brought up the run game too, because one of the big stories in the offseason was Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, and if I pronounce that poorly, my college French teacher is going to hate me for it. But he opted out, and for the best reasons possible, a medical doctor, he is a hero, I think, in everybody's eyes. Mm-hmm. But that offensive line looked more physical last night than it has in the past. That was one of when you talked about the team last year, it was like, well, the offensive line isn't a terribly physical offensive line. Can you talk about what you saw from them last night? Because it seems like everyone was impressed with how they played.
Well, I think you bring up a very valid point. And I think the reason you didn't think they were physical last year was because they couldn't run the ball as well. And so they're passing it. And passing is just pass blocking as an offensive lineman, of which I used to be. Believe it or not, I used to weigh 310 pounds. So, you know, if it wasn't bolted down, I was eating it back then. But as an offensive lineman, pass blocking is a little bit more docile and defensive as opposed to run blocking, which is really you're on the offensive. You can be more aggressive. And I think having the mix of it last night allowed the offensive line to get into a better rhythm and go after things. And it also puts the defensive linemen on their heels when they know they're just not rushing the passer each and every time. So I think that's going to go a long way. Right now, defensive coordinators preparing for the Chiefs right now, they don't know what to do because you can only keep a couple safeties back there and maybe in cover two and help those outside guys because you cannot guard Tyreek Hill with just one person. Sammy Watkins, if he's healthy, is a burner, and he was the leading receiver last night. And then, oh, by the way, you got one of the best, if not the best, tight ends in the game also. It's pick your poison. The thing we didn't see last night, which I think we may at some point, is they're going to put Hilaire out there as a wide receiver at some point in time and go with an empty set. And defenses are going to lose their mind because they're not going to know what to do because you're going to have all kinds of speed on the field. And the fact is, I think the one thing you got to do if you go after the Chiefs is you got to take your chances and you got to bring the house as much as possible and hope you can get there. And they did that a little bit last night and had a little bit of success. But the fact is, Superman back there, Showtime Mahomes, he's special. He's a generational talent. I know you've heard that a lot, but it's true. And so it's going to be interesting to see the rest of this season, how it plays out.
Speaking with Kendall Gammon, former NFL player, former broadcaster for the Chiefs radio network as well, Hall of Famer from Pittsburgh State in Kansas. We'll talk about that in just a bit. I want to say this before the next question. His adjustment to the zone defense that Houston had throwing out there, which was unlike the two games they had faced him last year, because they didn't want them to throw behind him. They didn't want anything to get behind him. And, 34 points later, but the adjustments that Mahomes makes, the fact that he can read a defense so proficiently and then adjust to all the tape he's seen that week, is just phenomenal. I want to quickly ask you about Pittsburgh State. They're not playing. Their entire conference isn't playing this year. I know you're still part of that organization out there. What's that like for the staff, for the athletic folks there, for the kids, for you?
It's tough. Yeah, I'm still involved with Pittsburgh State University, the Gorillas. And by the way, just so you know, because I know where this is kind of originating, it's Pittsburgh without the H. I am the assistant to the president of Pittsburgh State, so I've been involved with them since I retired in 2006. It's tough because, the coaches, we had a new coaching staff. Ryan Wright had been the offensive coordinator at Miami, Ohio, or I'm not sure which one now, and I apologize. But anyhow, came here. So putting a new system in, you get a couple practices in the spring, and then you close things down. And then, of course, the season is canceled. It's tough, but the big thing is you feel bad for the athletes, and not just football, but all the fall athletes right now. It's canceled. I will say this though, I think there are some developments where, possibly some 1AA teams may reach out and want to play and find another game. And generally, with us being fairly successful, that happens every once in a while. So I won't pull the plug on us playing a few games before the end of the year, which would be great. But either way, it's a difficult situation, and kudos to our president, Dr. Steve Scott, and dealing with it in a positive manner. And so many things going on this day and age. There's just a lot to digest.
Before we let you go, we want you to let everybody know what you're doing now, and if they want to contact Kendall Gammon, talk about the NFL. What are you up to? I know you always have a lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah, I alluded to it a little bit more, but before COVID came, I had about 30 plus engagements set up already for this year to speak. I talk about emotional strength. I talk about my challenges on and off the field. I've developed a framework for helping others recognize and use their emotional strength to really embrace change, build stronger relationships, and directly impact their own growth and success. I alluded to it earlier also of, my mantra is give your game ball, make a positive difference in the life of someone, including yourself, for no other reason than it's the right thing to do. And having a chance to go and speak to teams and make a difference, speak to corporations and make a difference, that's what it's all about. We as human beings, we're pack animals. We want to be a part of a group, and we want to help others. That's where we get our fulfillment, is when we help others and reach out. So that's my main focus, and I just absolutely love it.
People can follow you at Kendall Gammon. We will show that if you're watching the video on the screen. At Kendall Gammon for Twitter, kendallgammon.com as well, in terms of following you. And on that site, you can see some videos of you speaking and the like, Kendall, and some videos of you as well. I saw one of those where you do talk about the emotional strength that's needed to be a long snapper and to play 218 consecutive games in the National Football League, among the other challenges you faced. Is there any other Twitter or website information we should throw out there?
Well, I'm at Kendall Gammon. I believe it's on Instagram and Facebook as well. So you can find me there. And yeah, I was proud of that. 218 straight at one point. Then I came back. I broke my leg actually against Houston. And in the first half, didn't figure out it was broken until halftime. So played on it, but which kind of proves where my mental aptitude is right there. But 243 games in the NFL, 15 seasons, less than 80 people will play that long in the history of man. So very proud of it. But again, took advantage of my opportunities, and I was very fortunate. I mean, the big thing is, I think we all need to understand and practice gratitude and realize that nobody does anything on their own in this life.
No doubt about it. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we are hugely grateful for your presence on our show today. Thank you very much. Good luck to you in the future, and we look forward to you visiting our show once again, buddy.
Hey, I had a great time, and I would love to come on again. Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Kendall.